Hey Mama, welcome to Empowered Hospital Birth, a podcast by Looma Birth. I am Elizabeth, a birth doula, a birth educator, and a mama of 3 beautiful babies. And I support mamas just like you in having calm, confident, and connected birth experiences inside the hospital system. And something I care really deeply about, and the reason that I've created this podcast finally, is this. Birth is not just what happens to your body. It is about how you feel inside of it. Your environment, your nervous system, your sense of safety, all of this matters. So in this podcast, we're not talking about just what to expect. We're talking about what it actually feels like, why it feels these ways, and how we move through it feeling grounded, connected, and supported in that experience. I am so excited to be pouring over a decade of experience into these podcast episodes. So let's get into this one because this is a big shift for a lot of mamas. We are going to talk about why your body feels so different in the hospital. And we're going to talk about just, hey, we're animals. This is the mammal birth lens. So I want you to imagine something for a second. I love talking about 3 animals. So what are you envisioning? I want you to close your eyes if you're not driving or walking somewhere, and you can close your eyes, mama. And I want you to think about, how do you want to give birth? Don't think about the system. Don't think about what you've seen on social media. What does that look like? What does that feel like? Like if you just close your eyes for a moment and take a nice big breath in and just sigh it out, let your shoulders drop. What comes up? Because today I want to tell you a story about 3 animals and how those mammals give birth. Because when we are giving birth, we are just that. We are just animals. And so I love laying this foundation with my clients and my families about this, right? About what it means to give birth. So let's just talk for a moment about animals and how do they give birth, okay? So we're going to talk about 3 animals. First animal is a cat. So, right, I'd say if you were in my class in person with me, raise your hand if you have a pet cat or have had a pet cat in your life. Now, that pet cat is pregnant. Yay, we're going to get cute little kittens, right? We're so excited. Well, you can prep an old Amazon box. You could put some old towels in there and make a nice cozy little laboring bed or hospital room for your kitty cat who is going to be going into labor sometime soon. And is that cat likely to use that box? Probably not, because that cat is really strong opinions about what they like, what they don't like. And they most likely are going to start their labor, start the process, and they're going to disappear. And you're going to be working from home, hanging out and be like, oh my gosh, where's my cat? And you're going to go look under your bed, or you're going to look in the back of your closet, and you're going to find your cat has given birth to one of the kittens in the litter. And you're going to be like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. And you're going to grab your phone and you're going to turn on those lights and you're going to set those flashlights on your kitty cat and be like, oh my gosh, look how teeny tiny this little kitten is. Their eyes aren't open and they're covered in goop. And this is so exciting. And that cat is going to look at you and they're going to hiss and basically be really mad at you. And they're going to pick up that cat, their kitten, in their mouth. Their labor is going to completely stop, and they are going to move to another location where they yet again feel safe and secure, probably another closet. Maybe now they're going under your bed in a space that is dark, isolated, alone, warm and safe. And they're going to continue to give labor and birth the rest of their litter. Okay? So that's how cats like to give birth. They are isolated. They need to feel safe, and that is it. They need to feel safe and alone to be able to go through their laboring process. And they know that they're built for birth. They're not second-guessing that experience. They're not doubting themselves or their body's ability. They're just doing it. That is how cats give birth. Okay, isolated, alone, warm, safe. Yes? Now, dolphins. We're going to talk about dolphins. We know that dolphins are a lot like humans, right? Like, they typically live in pods, right? Those pods are anywhere 10, 20 dolphins, I believe. That's correct. Don't quote me on that. This isn't an animal podcast, right? But there's a bunch bigger than just a family nucleus unit, right? In our pods. And when a dolphin, female dolphin, goes into labor, they isolate off to the side and they typically have one or two other dolphins with them, right? It is a very intimate experience as they give birth to their babies, and they are separated from their pod, but they are not completely alone, right? They're not going somewhere dark per se. They're just going off with their dolphin support system, and they're keeping it very small, very intimate, and they're moving through the birth experience, okay? So now we have two different mammal stories that birth in two very different ways. And then I love to layer on how elephants give birth because they are literally really fun when they're giving birth. So elephants live in herds. There are 20, 30 people in their collective and in that herd. And so when an elephant goes into labor, she goes into the center of that herd, and the herd builds this really big circle around them. And they're stomping their feet, they're making their elephant sounds, and it's a ruckus, it's a rumpus, it's a party as mama is giving labor in the center of the circle. So not only are they creating safety by creating the circle around the birthing mama, but they're also creating noise so she doesn't feel alone when she's making noises. So physically and kind of emotionally protecting her as she then gives birth in front of the entire herd is center of attention. And the reason that I love talking with clients and kind of setting their mind or starting to build this foundation for their birth experience with these three examples, because you most likely are going to birth like one of those animals. So depending on who you are, depends on how that's going to show up in your birth experience. So if you listen to episode 1, we talked about how and why information by itself isn't going to make you feel prepared for birth. So now we get to start to dig a little deeper into this idea of who are we and how are we going to show up in our birth experience? Like for me, birth nerd here, like that's where the fun starts, right? Is like getting to know ourselves in this new, most intimate way. And if you are one of my first-time mamas listening to this podcast, you probably aren't quite sure what kind of person you are. Sometimes I have moms who are just straight up very clear, like, this is who I am. But a lot of us, we have to do a little soul searching. We got to do a little research into ourselves about who we are and how that might play in our birth experience. So, I would love to know if this resonates with you, if you automatically are like, yep, I'm an elephant, or yep, I'm a cat. A lot of us will fall into that middle range, right? Like, how does that dolphin birth experience sound? Does that sound like what we're setting ourselves up for by giving birth at the hospital, right? We're going to have our partner. You're going to maybe have your birth doula or a friend, a sister, a mom in that space with you, supporting you. And then obviously you have the hospital staff layered into that mix too. So like it is a more intimate, more one-on-one experience than either a cat or an elephant. But I have moms that are all of these, right? And so my point is, you are not a cat, you are not an elephant, you are not a dolphin, but you are a mammal. And no matter what kind of environment you need, whether you need that dark coat closet or you need a crowd of people circling around you and cheering you on, your body responds to safety and the environment in a really similar way. And most of us haven't been taught this. Most of us haven't thought about this. And so this is kind of the problem. When you go into labor, mama, you're in a state of flow, right? You feel connected to the experience. You're managing it because you're probably at home, right? And then you go to the hospital and then everything feels out of flow and everything feels differently. And that's because we have switched this environment, right? And that's not a bad thing. It just needs to be acknowledged. It needs to be prepped for. It needs to be planned for, right? All of a sudden, we have become that cat being watched. And for some of us, that's okay. We feel good about being watched. We want to be watched. And then some of us don't. And it feels so much harder to find that flow at the hospital state. And this is because our bodies don't run on logic. Our bodies run on the feeling of safety. Your nervous system is constantly scanning the room and asking, am I safe? Can I let go? Can I open up? And when you walk into a hospital, even if it's a good hospital, even if you feel safe mentally, logically, going to the hospital because of all the what ifs, right? Your body is taking in the bright lights, the unfamiliar space, the new pieces, the machines, the noises, observations, and all of this is like turning on literally bright lights right in your face. And there is a level of alertness. And it's not danger, but it doesn't translate to safety in your body. And that requires more work, mama. Because in order for you to be in labor, whatever mammal, your body will not open. It will not be able to perform the labor process if you do not feel safe. This is why language is so important as we prepare for birth. And so this is why you might be hearing things like labor stalled when I got to the hospital. Or you hear a story of like, I felt like I couldn't cope once I got there. Or as soon as I walked in the door, things got 10 times more intense. And instead of understanding why, it often gets interpreted as my body is failing me. I couldn't handle it anymore. Something went wrong. But that's not actually what's happening. Your body is responding exactly as it's supposed to. And because we are experiencing something different, we have changed the environment in which we're giving birth, in which we're laboring. So if your labor feels different in the hospital, or you hear the stories where it feels different in the hospital, or you're a second-time mom, you're a third-time mom, and it felt different when you got there, it doesn't mean that something went wrong. It doesn't mean you're failing. It means that you suddenly lost your ability to do it because your environment changed and your body responded. And so when you understand that, everything begins to shift because now we're not fixing you. We're supporting your environment. And this is where we spend a lot of time inside Looma Birth because we know most mamas are choosing the hospital, right? 98% of American women right now are choosing to give birth at the hospital. So the goal for me as a birth educator, as a birth doula, as a birth advocate is not to get you to avoid the hospital. And I will say it here and I will say it throughout this podcast. If you are interested in exploring birth outside the hospital, please do so. Interviews with midwives, searching and researching birth centers that are outside the hospitals. They give free tours. They'll do free consults. It is just going to take your time. So yes, absolutely 100%. If you're interested in giving birth outside the hospital, oh my gosh, I'm a cat. I need to give birth at home. Cool. Please do so. Okay. And we will definitely dive into that and talk about pros and cons and all of those things later on. But here at Looma, here what I've built as I've worked with hundreds of mamas throughout the years is that we are choosing to give birth at the hospital. And if we prepare you for that, if we help you understand what that means, both physically, emotionally, logically, you will understand how your body is going to respond, how you can create safety inside of that, and how to stay connected. So we can work with you in all of these sensations in all of your body. So instead of questioning it, you feel supported, you feel grounded, you feel connected, you feel embodied. And that's where the empowerment comes from, because you are still in your body, still experiencing the sensations. So, mama, if you've heard some of those stories that are out there on the internet about everything changed when I walked into the hospital, or your fear is, I can't handle it once I'm there, I want you to hear this. Your body isn't unpredictable, it's responsive. And when you understand what it is responding to, you get so much more power inside you for that experience. If this episode resonates with you, I want you to know you don't have to figure this out on your own. I am so passionate about helping you understand this physical, emotional, mental experience that is birth. This is the kind of support I love offering. It is what I've built inside Looma Birth and Empowered Hospital Birth online program, and you can find all the details in the show notes. If this helped you feel just a little bit more seen or grounded, I would love for you to share this with another mama who might need to hear this too. And I'll see you in the next episode.